This is Audible.
Less Than Free Press presents Backwoods Asylum by Megan Durr. Read for you by Paul Morris. It was still pitch black. Why was he awake? Skylar sat up in bed and shoved aside his electric blanket, immediately mourning the loss of heat. Swinging his legs over the side of the bed, he shoved his feet into slippers and left the bedroom, padding through the house to the kitchen. Then he heard it, distinct and faint, crying. Wolves by the sound of it, 2 little wolf puppies. Why would they be crying in the middle of the woods He glanced at the microwave clock. Oh, was it really 3 in the morning? The crying flared up again and Skylar's gut twisted. Who would leave babies alone in the woods and in the middle of winter? Had something happened to the parents? Why had they been on his property at all? And those questions just led to a host of others. Why had he not heard anything sooner? Why wolves when there were no wolf shifters anywhere remotely close? The nearest packs were 4 to 6 hours away. Why, oh why, did these things happen when it was freezing cold outside? Sighing, Skylar left the kitchen to go get properly dressed. He'd travel the woods in the shifted form, but he would definitely want the clothes later. In his bedroom, he shucked his flannel pajama pants and t-shirt, then pulled on thermal underwear, jeans, a t-shirt, sweater, and his favorite fleece. Tugging a toboggan down over his head, smushing his poor curls and guaranteeing they'd look stupid later, he sat down to lace on heavy, fur-lined boots. He snatched up his gloves and pulled them on as he headed for the back door, snagging one of the scarves from the rack by the door on his way past, winding it around his neck, burying his nose in the soft, warm wool. He stepped outside into the frigid night. The cries were louder without the buffer of the house. Filled with so much terror that Skylar ached and feared for them. He wanted to sink his fangs into whatever jerk had left them. He hoped he hadn't slept through something tragic and the parents were dead. Well, he wouldn't know until he knew, and standing on his porch wouldn't tell him anything. Closing his eyes, Skylar reached deep, called up his alt form, true form most like to say, but Skylar was of the opinion that both forms were true forms, and he'd much rather use a microwave than swallow his food whole, thanks, and let it overtake him. Magic prickled and rubbed along his skin, wrapped around him like a scratchy blanket. The world seemed to vanish beneath him, stomach rolling in the moment before his alternate form took hold. Skylar flicked his tongue, tasting the air. Cold. So miserably cold. He could also taste a wolf, blood. Judging by the vibrations, they were near his frog pond. He could only sense the pups, though, which meant they'd been abandoned, or he could not yet taste anyone who might be dead. Skylar slithered off across the frosted grass and into the dense woods that covered most of his property, constantly sampling the air, listening to and feeling the activity of the woods. Mostly it was quiet, too quiet. Even the nocturnal animals had withdrawn, alarmed by the crying of the pups. As he got closer, Skylar could taste the unique tang of shifter. He had figured as much, since real wolves were even less likely, but it still made him angry all over again. Baby shifters. He wished he had someone to sink his fangs into, just to watch them freak out before they realized his venom was not as dangerous as that of some snakes. A pity that. He wouldn't mind a bit of his parents' venom to inflict on the kind of monster who would hurt babies. He reached the pond quickly, his presence driving off the last few lingering frogs, even though he'd never eaten a frog in his life. The pups were huddled together near the pond, their body heat vibrant, and they were squirming and crying enough that between the vibrations and the heat signature, Skylar had an excellent image of them. They tensed and went quiet when they realized he was there. One of them recoiled, while the slightly smaller one lunged forward and began to bark for all it was worth. Affection surged for them. The one that knew better than to tangle with a snake, especially in the dark, and the smaller one that was going to do it anyway. Skylar reached for his magic again, letting out a slow breath when his human form settled into place. The barking puppy stopped, then gave a low, confused whine. Skylar crept in toward them on his knees and extended a hand. "Shh, little pups. Sky won't hurt you." The smaller puppy whined again, hunched and creeping as it drew close enough to press its nose into Skylar's hand. It yipped a moment later and attempted to climb him. Skylar fell over on his ass and allowed the puppy into his lap. The other one quickly followed, sniffing his jeans thoroughly before following his brother to squirm and huddle against Skylar, shivering with fear and cold and the relief of no longer being alone. He held them close, feeling possessive, protective. Nobody was going to hurt them ever again, not if he could help it. As to that, however, he still had no idea who had abandoned them or why. There was no sign of anyone else, save a faint trace of a third wolf and a hint of kerosene. It was feeling more and more like someone had abandoned them right in the middle of the forest, but close enough to his house that he would find them. Everyone knew that portion of the forest belonged to the evil shifter Cottonmouth. He petted the puppies, smiling faintly when they licked his hand and tried to climb up his chest to lick his chin. He leaned down to accommodate them, closing his eyes and grimacing as they slobbered all over his face. Drawing back, he continued the petting until they quieted down. "Poor Hansel and Gretel," he murmured. "Left in the woods for the witch to find. Unfortunately for whoever left you, the witch doesn't put anything in the oven except TV dinners and the casseroles his mom brings over." The puppy snuffled and sighed in their sleep. Skylar hugged them close and stood to trek back home. He was a shivering pile of misery by the time he reached it, and the poor little pups were no better off. Bustling inside, he carried the puppies into his living room and got them settled on the deep, soft, faux fur rug in front of the fireplace. He turned on the gas and got the fire going. Then he went back to the door to lock and bolt it before stripping off all his outdoor wear. Next, he went to the kitchen and rustled around for something the puppies might like. But he barely had food for himself, and none of it was good for babies. Drat. Well, he had milk and microwave sausages. That would have to do for the time being. He warmed the milk and heated up the sausages, then carried it all into the living room. The puppies stirred as they smelled the food and yipped happily at him before thrusting their noses into the bowls and promptly getting more of it on them than in them. Skylar reached out to pull them back, calm them down, and get them drinking the milk. It was a pity, almost, that they were too big for bottles. Holding them close and bottle-feeding them would have been easier, and, well, it would have been nice. He was being stupid. The important thing was that he had found them in time, and they were safe, and getting them home should be a simple enough matter. Except, well, not really. He had no idea who had abandoned them. The nearest wolf pack was 4 hours away, if weather and traffic cooperated, and they had absolutely nothing to do with him. Heck, the only wolf he really knew didn't even like him. Skylar's chest gave a familiar lurch ache as he thought of Brady. All the hours of class he'd spent wishing from afar. The few sorry attempts at conversation before he'd realized that Brady just plain didn't like him. It didn't even seem to have anything to do with the fact that Skylar was a snake, which was reason enough for most people. Brady didn't like him. Brady also believed in live and let live, however. It was one of the biggest reasons Skylar liked him, and why he held on to a quiet hope that one day something might change, no matter how many times his mother told him to stop being a dumbass. Worrying at his bottom lip while he tried to figure out what to do, Skylar fed the puppies little pieces of sausage until they were gone, then fetched a blanket and pillow so he could settle with them by the fire. He grabbed his cell phone from the coffee table and, with a pile of contented puppies in his lap, dialed a number he'd been given once for a study group and had clung to fiercely ever since. He picked up on the third ring.
"Who the fuck is this, and why are you calling me at 5 in the morning?"
It's, Skylar Trapp from...
"I know who you are. I'm not an idiot. Why are you calling me?"
Skylar dragged his teeth across his bottom lip. I wanted to know, are there any wolves missing children?" There was a long pause, followed by a flat,
"What?"
"I found 2 wolf shifter puppies abandoned in my woods, totally alone, no sign of how they got there. I wanted to get them safely home, but I didn't know who else to call. I'm sorry." Another silence, and Skylar cringed. He should have just called the main offices and gotten in touch through formal channels, but that could take forever, and it would have involved so many people. The puppies whined, and he petted them until they calmed down, crooning softly. Until he knew who had tried to leave them for dead, no one was getting anywhere near them.
"I haven't heard of any pups gone missing,"
Brady said quietly.
"What color are they?"
Skylar swallowed as he really took in their appearance. The soft fur beneath his stroking fingers was red-brown, fading to an almost red gold at the bottom of their legs and on the chest and underbelly. He'd been preoccupied with worrying for their safety, but he still wondered how he missed it. They look like you, just darker, more black than tawny."
"Their eyes, Skylar, what color?"
"Grayish-blue?" Brady's eyes were more of a greenish yellow. Skylar loved his senses in snake form, all the things he could taste and hear and feel, but he missed colors when he was in that form. Nothing was prettier than all the colors that things could be. Brady swore, voice loud and sharp, making Skylar hunch. He'd been able to shift since he was 12, when people from the Lost Shifter Foundation caught him and helped him, and given him a family to help him learn how to be human as well as snake. But he'd been a snake for all 12 years of his life before that day, and in that time, he'd learned that big, loud animals were dangerous, even if they were also beautiful and strong and warm.
"Let me call you back, okay, Skylar? And would you do me a favor and tell no one else about this?"
"Of course. I want the puppies to be safe. I won't talk to anyone about them until you say otherwise, I promise."
"Good. Thanks, Skylar. You drive me insane, but I know you're a good guy. I'll call you back soon."
He hung up before Skylar could